You have been taught all your life that volcanoes are the breath of the earth, canyons are the work of rivers, and deserts are the play of climate. But Vesuvius, Fujiyama, and hundreds of other mountains look like gigantic spoil tips, while the Sahara and Gobi look like dumps of a mining and processing plant. Why do natural wonders around the planet behave like waste from metallurgy? Who needed to turn quarries, mines, and pits into legends of erosion and ancient cataclysms? And if the entire Earth is covered with scars of extraction and processing, then the main question is, do we live at home or do we work in someone else's mine? Imagine that you are a lathe operator, not just a craftsman, but a professional of the fifth category, a person who has worked with metal and stone all his life, feels the material with his hands, knows every nuance of processing. You enter the hall of the Hermitage and stop in front of the Tsar's bath, 48 tons of solid granite, a diameter of more than 5 meters. The depth of the bowl allows an adult to stand upright inside, and you immediately understand this is impossible. Granite is processed as if it has passed through a computer-controlled machine. Perfect radii without the slightest deviations. Impeccable polishing, in which light is reflected as if in a mirror. The geometry is so precise that modern laser measuring devices show deviations in fractions of a millimeter. This cannot be achieved by hand, even if one were to chisel for 7 consecutive years, as the official version claims. History names the master Sukarno, a surf stone carver who supposedly needed 7 years to manually chisel and polish this giant bowl. Excuse the expression, but any specialist looking at this bathtub will tell you outright, and without beating around the bush, this is complete nonsense. Machine processing, no other options. Oh. With all the responsibility of a universal turner, it can be stated, this is industrial production, not the handiwork of one person with a hammer and chisel. To achieve such a surface on granite, a rotating lathe of giant dimensions is required. The stone must rotate around its axis, and the cutter must move along a predetermined trajectory with a constant angle and pressure. Hand tools inevitably leave marks, irregularities, micro scratches, places where the hand trembled, where the effort changed. Here, there are none. The surface is identical across the entire area. It is physically impossible to achieve this manually. Now go out to Palace Square. Lift your head up. The Alexander column rises before you like a stone needle piercing the sky. 600 tons of pink granite, 27 meters high. Imagine the weight of 200 trucks compressed into one monolith. And the most interesting thing, the shape. This is not a simple cone or cylinder. The shape is called entasis, a complex mathematical curve calculated by ancient architects so that from afar the column appears perfectly straight. The human eye distorts proportions at great distances. A straight column seems concave. Therefore, they made it convex to compensate for the distortion of perception. But creating entasis by hand is not just about cutting stone. It requires precise mathematical calculation and perfect execution. It is physically impossible to make this without rotation on a lathe. The stone must rotate slowly, while the cutter must move along a specified curve. The slightest deviation, and the shape is disrupted. The entasis turns into a crooked cone. Try conducting the experiment yourself. Order from a lathe operator a copy at least 2 meters high made of foam or soft wood. The only requirement is to use only hand tools, no machines. He will refuse. Any craftsman will tell you that it is unrealistic. And here are 600 tons of granite, one of the hardest materials on the planet. And now, step closer. Look carefully at the surface of the column. Upon closer examination, it becomes apparent that it is composite. It is not a monolith, as the tour guides try to convince us. At least 7 separate cylinders, stacked on top of each other with millimeter precision. Thin seams are visible, barely discernible to the eye. Then all this is plastered with a special composition resembling marble to create the illusion of wholeness. Why? If this is a monument to Emperor Alexander, if this is just an architectural ornament of the square, Why such technical complexity? Why make the column composite? Spend efforts on hiding seams? Create the illusion of a monolith? The answer is obvious. This is not a monument. This is a technical structure, part of some system, the purpose of which we no longer understand, or do not want to understand. We will fly across the ocean to the other side of the planet. Peru, the sacred valley of the Incas, the fortress of Ollantaytambo, the ruins that are shown to tourists as evidence of the greatness of an ancient civilization. Polygonal masonry made of blocks weighing from 40 to 120 tons each. For comparison, a modern dump truck weighs 25 tons. Here, the stones are 5 times heavier. The stones are fitted together so tightly that it is impossible to insert not only the blade of a knife, but even a piece of paper between them. The seams are practically invisible. The wall looks monolithic, as if poured from concrete in one piece. But these are separate blocks of irregular shape. Each has its own unique geometry, polygons with 10, 12, or 15 angles, and each of these angles perfectly matches the neighboring block. Imagine the task: to cut 2 multi-ton stones from solid granite so that their irregular, curvilinear surfaces match with a precision of 1 millimeter. It is impossible to do this in one way. Either you have perfect 3-dimensional processing of each block on a computer-controlled machine capable of cutting according to digital models, or it is not natural stone at all. Geopolymer concrete, a technology that modern science prefers to remain silent about. A material that is prepared like a cement mixture from crushed rock. Chemical binders are added. It is poured into a mold of any complex shape, and it hardens, becoming indistinguishable from natural granite or basalt. Any shape, any complexity, any sizes. Millimeter precision of joints is achieved automatically. Adjacent blocks are cast to each other. Both machining and casting require industrial capacities of enormous scale. Factories, chemical production, transportation systems, energy in colossal volumes, all that which the ancient Incas supposedly did not have. But the masonry stands. A fact remains a fact. And here, a disturbing picture starts to emerge. Who owned such machines? Who needed technical columns disguised as monuments? Who could create artificial stone indistinguishable from natural stone? And most importantly, if they could process stone like that, cut it, melt it, cast it, how much stone did they actually extract for their needs? Where are the quarries from which they obtained this material in such volumes? Let's go to Naples, Cappella San Severo, the sculpture Christ under the Shroud. The marble figure is covered with the thinnest veil made of the same stone. The folds of the fabric are depicted with such detail that every thread is visible. Transparency, texture, millimeter precision. Officially, we are told, the genius of the 18th century sculptor. But any modern specialist will confirm, without a CNC machine, such a thing cannot be done. You cannot carve transparent fabric from a solid piece with a chisel. It is physically impossible. And now pay attention to the technology. Until the end of the 19th century, the technology of artificial marble was widely used in Europe. Not carving, but casting. Not chipping, but modeling. Genoa, the monumental cemetery. Tombstones that look like drapery made of fabric. This is not carving from solid stone. This is casting in molds. The material was prepared like concrete, poured into matrices, and obtained finished parts of any complexity. Let's return to Crimea, Sevastopol, the stone bridge. Each block of masonry is a separate sculpture of irregular polygonal shape. Compare it with a modern work. To the right of the bridge is a wall of wild stone, laid out in a manner quite decent by today's standards. But next to the ancient masonry, it looks like children's blocks. The seams are hardly visible. The geometry is perfect. This is regression. Over 200 years, technology has degraded. And here the key question arises. If the stone was cast like concrete, then where is the production? Where are the factories for the production of artificial granite and marble? Where are the quarries from which raw materials for such volumes were taken? To cast millions of tons of artificial stone, it is necessary to extract raw materials, limestone, marble, granite. All of this was extracted from the bowels of the earth, and the traces of this extraction cannot be hidden. All the cities of the planet are built of stone, retaining walls, embankments, foundations. The volume of masonry in old cities is equal to the volume of the buildings themselves. Where did they get so much material? Crimea, Eski Kerman. Guides call it a cave city. They say that ancient people lived in the hollowed-out rocks. When asked about the deep ruts in the stone, they reply that the local nobility rode in carts, which caused the tracks. Seriously, cartwheels cut a rut in solid limestone to a depth of several centimeters. Look more closely. The straight vertical walls, as if someone cut layers of rock slice by slice. Signs of sawing. The geometry of the excavation is industrial, not residential. The whitened niches in the walls are not rooms, but storage spaces for tools. This is a quarry, a limestone quarry, which archaeologists have dubbed an ancient settlement. Çufut Kale. The name is similar to Turkish toponyms like Çatalhöyük. A unified civilization, unified extraction technologies. This is not a city, but part of a network of quarries spread across the entire coastline. Open Google Maps. Find the modern quarry of Szolkino in Crimea. The same structure. Vertical walls. Niches for tools. A thought experiment. Imagine that 1,000 years will pass. Wind and water erosion will smooth the corners, collapse part of the walls, cover it with vegetation. Archaeologists of the future will find this place and solemnly declare, ancient people lived in caves. And now, the scale. Crimea has thousands of kilometers of catacombs. Inkerman, the Odessa catacombs. They are officially called quarries, and this is the only thing that science agrees on. The volumes of extracted limestone amount to tens of millions of cubic meters. Where did all this stone go? If it was only for building houses, then the entire planet should have been developed twice. So, it must have been used for something else. Limestone is a building material, but a developed civilization needs not only houses, it needs metals. And metals are mined in entirely different quarries, much larger ones. United States of America, Grand Canyon, length 446 kilometers, width up to 29 kilometers, depth up to 1,800 meters. The official version is that the Colorado River carved it out over millions of years. The problem is that the river flows at the bottom of an already formed canyon. It is too shallow and slow to cut through such a chasm. Look at the walls. The layering is perfect for terrace mining. Nearby, the dining mountains of Mesa Verde are terraces of extraction. Marble Canyon, part of the same system, is 100 kilometers wide. The river does not create such geometry. These are signs of industrial development. Wyoming, Devil's Tower, height 386 meters, diameter of the base 300 meters. We are told, the remains of volcanic lava, basalt columns hardened into perfect hexagons. But look closer, these are signs of rock cutting. Basalt, when solidifying, forms cracks, but not this evenly. Devil's Tower is what remains after the carving. The rest was removed. Australia, Uluru, also known as Ayers Rock. Officially, the largest monolith in the world. Height 348 meters, length 3.5 kilometers. But it is not a monolith. It is what has not been cut away. Around it are traces of extraction, smoothed by erosion over the centuries. Yakutia, Lena pillars. The height reaches up to 220 meters, stretching along the Lena River for 80 kilometers. Officially, natural erosion. The shape is identical to terraced quarry workings. Layer by layer, the rock was cut away, leaving vertical walls. China, Wuyishan Mountains, Danxia, Zhangye Danxia, geological park with colorful layered formations. A tourist attraction under state protection. Tourists are only led along wooden trails. Why? So they do not fall into the toxic tailings. These are the exhausted terraces of giant quarries, disguised as natural wonders. And here begins the most interesting part. On maps from the 17th and 18th centuries, These territories are marked as Tartaria, Great Tartary, from the Urals to the Pacific Ocean, a giant empire about which modern textbooks say almost nothing. What if it was not just an empire, but an industrial giant? A civilization that left traces in the form of quarries of planetary scale, the Carlsbad Caverns in New Mexico, a depth of more than 300 meters, a large hall with a length of 1,200 meters and a vault height of 100 meters. We are told that water has eroded the limestone over millions of years. But water erodes chaotically, creating winding tunnels. Here, the geometry of the corridors is perfect. Right angles, smooth vaults. This is an underground excavation. Mammoth Cave in Kentucky. 627 kilometers of explored passages, and this is only the studied part. The corridors run strictly horizontally, like mine shafts. Water does not erode like that. These are mines. The geography of caves coincides with the maps of Tartaria. North America, the western coast, is marked as Tartaria on old maps. The Urals, Altai, Caucasus, area of Great Tartary. China, southern provinces, Chinese Tartary. There are giant cave systems everywhere, a unified network of underground mining. Underground mines provide ore. Open pit quarries provide rock. But there is one more trace of extraction, the most obvious. Rivers. Those very rivers that are passed off as natural. Watch the video of the modern rotary excavator in action. The machine cuts a long straight trench, leaving characteristic terraces on the sides. One bank is higher than the other. This is the picture we see all over the world. The Tobol River in Siberia. One bank is significantly higher than the other. Geologists explain this by the Coriolis force, that the rotation of the Earth causes the river to erode one of the banks. But look at the shape of the riverbed. This is the trace of a rotary excavator. Voronezh region, Krivoe Ozero. The river flows in a perfect loop. In the center of the loop is a small island overgrown with bushes. The logic is simple. There was an excavator on the island, and a trench was cut around it. Officially, this is called a geological cut, a ravine, the result of erosion. In reality, the work of an industrial machine 200 or 300 years ago. The proof is that the slopes have not collapsed, which means this happened recently. Switzerland, Creux du Van, a rocky depression in the shape of a horseshoe, width of 1,400 meters, wall height of 200 meters. Officially a natural amphitheater, a result of erosion. The shape is as if a giant scoop had passed over the limestone. Siberia, Anabarskoye Plateau, George River. Perfect geometric shapes of the banks. A terrace on one bank is tens of meters higher. This is not river erosion. This is a trace of rock extraction. All examples are the territory of Great Tartary on maps of the 17th and 18th centuries. A unified technology for creating channel trenches for transporting the mined rock. The rock has been extracted. Quarries have been opened. Mines have been dug. Rivers have been cut. Billions of tons of rock have been removed from the depths. But what comes next? The ore needs to be enriched to separate the necessary metals from the worthless rock. And the worthless rock, what to do with it? And here is where the most interesting part begins. Mining and Processing Plant, abbreviated as MPP, the technology that is still used today. Ore with a certain content of the desired element, iron, copper, aluminum, is sent for processing. There, through chemical or physical methods, the metal concentrate is separated and the waste rock is taken away to a dump. The dumps of waste rock are called tailings. The characteristics of a spoil tip are recognizable. The shape is a regular cone, like a pyramid with a circular base. The height of modern spoil tips reaches 200 to 300 meters. The property is that they burn from the inside and sometimes explode. Constant chemical reactions occur inside between the remnants of sulfur, coal, and pyrite. Gases accumulate. Pressure increases. Sometimes an explosion occurs, and the top of the spoil tip is blown off. Donbass, Ukraine. dumps up to 300 meters high. They burn for decades, shrouded in smoke. At night, they glow from within with an orange light, like volcanoes. Sometimes they explode with a muffled sound, scattering rock for hundreds of meters. This is the work of humans. Official science agrees with this. No one disputes it. These are technogenic dumps. And now attention, a turn that will change your perception of the planet. Italy, Vesuvius, height 1,281 meters. Officially, an active volcano. Arguments, it burns, smokes, periodically erupts. In the 79th year of our era, it destroyed Pompeii and Herculaneum, covering them with ash. A classic volcano, a symbol of the destructive power of nature. This is what textbooks tell us. But let's take a look inside, into the caldera, a depression at the top from where lava supposedly erupts. Critical test. If this is a volcano through which molten magma with a temperature of more than 1,000 degrees passed, then the walls of the caldera should be melted. Solidified lava flows, a smooth surface of basalt glass, signs of high temperature exposure, sintered layers, crystallized rock. A volcanic bomb ejected from the crater forms characteristic slags upon solidification. If this is a spoil heap, then the walls will be layered and loose. The rock is loose, it can be dug with an ordinary shovel. There are no signs of melting. Horizontal layers are visible, as in a dump that was built up gradually, machine by machine. We look at the photographs of the Vesuvius caldera. We zoom in, we study the walls. What do we see? The walls are layered. The rock is loose, clearly sedimentary. No signs of melting, no basalt glass, just ordinary empty rock piled in layers. The verdict is clear, a spoil tip, not a volcano. But Vesuvius is burning and exploding, you will say. Yes, like the spoil tips of Donbass. Inside, chemical reactions occur, pressure builds up. Sometimes an explosion happens. Ash and gases are ejected. But this is not lava from the Earth's mantle. This is burning empty rock, waste from enrichment, dumped in heaps centuries or millennia ago. Kamchatka, Kluchevskaya Sopka, height 4,850 meters, almost 5 kilometers, the highest so-called volcano in Eurasia. It burns constantly, smokes and periodic eruptions occur. At such pressure inside the 5-kilometer pile of barren rock, even thermonuclear reactions are possible. The shape is a perfect cone, like that of a spoil heap. Look at the slopes. Where are the solidified lava flows? They are not there. The slopes are covered with loose, crumbly rock. This is not magma eruptions. This is rubble from a landslide. New Zealand, Mount Taranaki, a perfect cone of correct shape. Height 2,500 meters. Where are the solidified lava flows on the slopes that should be present after eruptions? They are not there. The slopes are covered with the same loose rock. This is not a volcano. This is a giant dump of empty rock. Central America, El Salvador, Santa Ana, blown top. All the so-called volcanoes of Central and South America have the same shape, a perfect cone. Popocatépetl in Mexico, height 5,426 meters, the smoking mountain, as the locals call it. Eruptions occur regularly. The reality is that inside, a giant pile of ash burns more than 5 kilometers high. Let's return to Kamchatka, small Semyachik. We open Wikipedia, a short ridge consisting of 3 merged cones. Its length is about 3 kilometers, height 1.5 kilometers. 3 heaps of debris, piled nearby, merged at the bases. Tolbachik, height 3,600 meters. It consists of 2 parts, sharp and flat Tolbachik. On the slopes, there are more than 120 cinder cones. In reality, there are 120 small heaps of debris piled around 2 huge ones. Japan, Fujiyama, the most famous volcano in the world, a sacred mountain, the symbol of Japan. An ideal cone soaring 3,776 meters high. Millions of tourists take pictures against its backdrop. No one thinks about why the shape is so perfect. Because it is a man-made mound, not a natural formation. Why were they called volcanoes? Why was this planetary scale lie necessary? The answer is simple: to hide the scale of industrial activity of the previous civilization. If it is recognized that these are spoil tips, then it will have to be acknowledged that there was a highly developed industry, the extraction and processing of ore on a planetary, monstrous scale. An empire that owned all of this, an empire whose traces have been erased from textbooks. Kamchatka and the Kurils are marked on maps as Great Tartary. Japan on some maps is labeled Japanese Tartary. Mexico, Central America, traces of the same technology. Conclusion: a unified industrial system across the planet. Tails are conical-shaped dumps, but the empty rock was not only piled into cones. There were dumps of another type. Rule for recognizing a spoil heap: if it is layered, loose, and can be dug with a shovel, this is a spoil heap of waste rock. If nothing grows or it grows poorly, this is also a sign. China, Zhangye Dangxia Geopark, colored mountains, bright layers of red, yellow, green. Tourist attraction. Tourists are led only along wooden paths. Why? To avoid falling into toxic waste rock. Germany, Mount Schmidt-Hochhof, clear landslide on the railway tracks. Pamir, the valley of the Surkangu River. Piles of earth are heaped around. Nothing grows. These are tailings. Russia, Pyatigorsk, Mounts Mashuk, Beshtau. The shape is similar to tailings. Philippines, Bohol Island, Chocolate Hills, 1,268 hills of regular conical shape. Area of 50 square kilometers. Height up to 100 meters. The most popular tourist destination in the Philippines. Officially, a natural wonder. In reality, dumps of a mining and processing plant. Did you see the hill near the house? Take a closer look. If it is loose and layered, it is a man-made dump. Tailings and hills are just part of the waste. With such scales of extraction, there must be billions of tons of rock waste. Where are they? Deserts. Huge volumes of sand, the origin of which science cannot explain. Especially the deserts inside continents. Gobi, Karakum, Sahara. There is no ocean nearby. Where does the sand come from? Version. Sand is a waste of chemical enrichment of ore, the technology of a mining and beneficiation plant. The rock is crushed into fine powder to increase the contact area with the chemical reagent. It is processed. Metals enter the solution. The empty rock remains, silicon and quartz. The empty rock is discarded. The geography matches. The Grand Canyon is near the Nevada desert. The mountains of Central Asia are near the Karakum and Kyzylkum deserts. The mountains of Egypt are near the Sahara. The Ural is near the sandy deposits of Siberia. Rivers were used as waste transport. Sand was poured into the river, and the current carried it along the riverbed. River sand everywhere consists of silicon and quartz. This is exactly what remains after the extraction of metals. Central Asia, Gobi, Karakum, on old maps, the heart of Great Tartary. Sahara, part of African Tartary. Giant territories of sand are equal in scale to processing. They were not deserts. They became deserts afterward. Careers, caves, river trenches, volcano-like spoil tips, hills, deserts. All these are links in one chain, systems of planetary scale. And now, when we have connected all the clues, the picture becomes frightening. The extraction volumes are astronomical. Billions, trillions of tons of ore have been extracted from the depths. Processed. Metals isolated. Waste rock has been piled into spoil heaps. Volcanoes reaching heights of up to 5 kilometers. The waste from chemical enrichment has turned entire regions into deserts. On Earth, a maximum of a few % of the extracted materials are consumed. The question that does not give me peace is, where was the rest taken? Who needs such volumes of metal? There are two versions. Both are frightening. Both force us to reconsider everything we knew about our place in the world. Version 1. Tartaria is a great industrial empire. On maps of the 17th and 18th centuries, it occupied a vast territory from the Urals to the Pacific Ocean. Great Tartaria. On some maps, It is marked as the largest state on the planet, larger than the Russian Empire, larger than China. But in modern textbooks, there is almost nothing about it. What if it was not just an empire with borders and a capital, but an industrial superpower of planetary scale? A civilization that possessed stonemasonry and metalworking technologies that we now consider impossible. Quarries in the mountains, underground mines hundreds of meters deep, mining and processing plants across all continents, a transportation network in the form of river canals cut by rotary excavators, tailings piles 5 kilometers high that we now call volcanoes, a unified system of extraction and processing across the entire planet. The scale is breathtaking. This is not a local civilization. This is a global industrial system encompassing all continents. The traces of its work extend from Kamchatka to Mexico, from Siberia to Australia. Everywhere the same technologies, the same methods, as if the whole world were a single industrial complex. What happened to her? Why did she disappear? The official story is silent. But if you connect the facts, a cleanup emerges. A systematic destruction of evidence. Volcanoes were labeled as volcanoes to hide the traces of industry. Quarries were declared natural wonders, the result of erosion. Cave cities are homes of ancient people. The history of Tartaria has been erased from textbooks. Maps were redrawn. Toponyms were changed. From the great empire, only names remain on old maps, which modern historians call cartographers' mistakes. Version 2. Even more frightening. We are the service staff. The Earth is someone's giant mine, being developed for millions of years. Civilizations come and go. States arise, flourish, and collapse. Nations are formed, clash, and disappear into oblivion. One thing remains unchanged: the extraction process. Slow, but relentless. People extract rock. They process it. They extract metals. They transport it somewhere. Civilization is exhausting. Its resources are depleted. The population is shrinking. A new wave comes. New workers who don't even know they are workers. They think they are building their cities, developing their culture, creating their history. In reality, they are just continuing to service the quarry. They carry out a program laid down long before their appearance. And the final point of this process is already visible. Look at Mars, the red planet, a lifeless desert. But there are the same cone-shaped volcanic hills, the same quarries. The Valles Marineris Canyon, 4,000 kilometers long, 7 kilometers deep. This is 4 times longer than the Grand Canyon. Mars has already been worked over, transformed into a dead rocky desert. Earth is next in line. But even when the Earth turns into a lifeless desert, the process will not stop. We will build self-replicating robots ourselves, machines capable of creating copies of themselves from mined materials. They will take our place. They will continue to extract resources without us. We will go down in history like Tartaria, like the civilizations that preceded it, like the countless peoples from whom not even a name remains. Who is the owner of this mine? Who receives the metals extracted by billions of hands over thousands of years? We do not know. Perhaps it is an automatic system launched millions of years ago and operating according to a set program. Perhaps it is a conscious exploitation by a civilization beyond our perception. Perhaps Tartaria realized the truth, tried to break free from this system, and for this, it was destroyed, erased from history as a warning to future generations. Remember the old poem, "The Mill of God." The mill of God is very good. The mill of God grinds slowly. Slowly, but surely the wheel turns. Everything will be ground absolutely. The poet understood what he was writing about. The process is relentless, slow, but certain. The millstones grind civilizations, crush nations, turn planets into dust. And it is impossible to stop this because we ourselves are part of the mechanism. Cogs in a gigantic machine, the purpose of which is unknown to us. Every mountain you see from the window, ask yourself, is it nature or a spoil heap? Every river you float on, is it erosion or an industrial trench carved by a rotary excavator? Every desert you drive through, Is it climate or waste from the chemical processing of billions of tons of ore? We live in a giant mine. The question is not whether resources are being extracted here. That is obvious. The question is, who is the owner of this mine? Who is behind this entire system? And are we free builders of our civilization, creators of our destiny, or just another generation of workers in someone else's quarry? Workers who will be replaced by new ones when the current shift has exhausted its resources and work in this area is completed. Tartaria may have known the answer. It possessed technologies that allowed one to see the truth. It built systems that went beyond simple extraction. And perhaps that is why it was erased from history so thoroughly that even traces remained only on old maps, as a warning. As a reminder of what happens to those who try to break free from their assigned role. Now you know. You have seen the evidence. You have connected the dots. The question remains, what will you do with this knowledge? Will you continue to live as you have, considering volcanoes to be volcanoes and rivers to be rivers? Or will you start to look at the world with different eyes, asking questions to which official science does not provide answers? The choice is yours. Subscribe to my channel. Don't forget to click the bell so you don't miss new investigations. There are many more mysteries and discoveries ahead. We will continue to look for clues, ask uncomfortable questions, and explore what official science overlooks. Because the truth is always nearby. You just need to want to see it.